The most brutal thing this drama does isn't the betrayal, or the exile, or even the whole, surprise, you're raising a half-dragon kid in a world that wants her extinct, situation. It's the way it lets you sit inside that one stupid, perfect night where two people finally exhale, and then spends the rest of the season showing you exactly how expensive a single exhale can be. Deny me, Dragon King is one of those 2026 fantasy romances that looks like it's here for the flames and the wings and the palace gowns, and then it quietly turns around and punches you in the throat with parenthood, shame, and the kind of love that keeps showing up even when it's not welcome. And yes, since you're here with me on Bongo Gaming, I'm going full spoilers, because this story is built on reveals and consequences and I refuse to tiptoe around the good parts. If you like the way I break these down, hit subscribe, no pressure, just come hang out when the next drama decides to ruin our week. So the first thing you need to understand about this show's world is that dragons aren't just mythical creatures. They are a ruling class with a court, a religion, a military, and a very specific obsession with bloodlines. The dragon realm is called Valor, and it's basically carved into the ashen spires, black volcanic mountains that steam at night like the earth is breathing. Humans live in the lowlands outside the mountain ring, and there's a tense trade arrangement, but it's not peace. It's a ceasefire with paperwork. The dragons call humans soft skins to their faces and ash fodder behind their backs. The humans call dragons sky tyrants and teach their kids bedtime stories about dragon fire-eating prayers. Kale, our Dragon King, is introduced the way a fantasy male lead is legally obligated to be introduced, in silhouette, with heat rippling in the air around him, wearing a crown that looks like it was hammered out of obsidian and regret. But the drama immediately gives him a wrinkle I didn't expect. It doesn't play him as a smug conqueror. He's tired. He's politically boxed in. The elder WYIMS council keeps him in a chokehold with tradition, and his entire reign is under this looming idea that he's unproven, because he hasn't taken a consort from one of the high clans. He's the king, but half his scenes feel like a man being audited. And Lyra, human Lyra, walks into this story with the exact kind of quiet competence that fantasy shows love to undervalue until they need it. She's a caravan herbalist from Brinewick, a border town that survives on salt, dried fish, and pretending the mountains aren't watching. Lyra's not a chosen warrior. She's not, secretly, a princess, at the start. She's the woman people drag their feverish kids to at midnight because she's the only one who knows which route stops convulsions. She's practical, she's underpaid, and she's carrying grief like it's a second satchel. Her younger brother died in a winter plague 2 years before the story starts, and you can tell the writers never let her forget it. It's in how she flinches at coughing. It's in how she hoards dried lavender like it's currency. The show's first big swing is how it makes their meeting feel accidental without making it feel cheap. Kale doesn't meet Lyra at a royal banquet. He meets her in a human tavern called the Eel and Ember, disguised, cloak up, eyes hidden, trying to chase down a black market supply chain that's been smuggling dragon steel out of Valor. He's hunting a traitor. She's there because she's delivering remedies to a dock foreman who can't pay her. They're both in that exhausted, end-of-day space where your guard drops just because you don't have the energy to keep it up. And the drama does this little trick with sound design right away. Whenever Kale is on screen, there's this low, almost subaudible hum, like a distant furnace. It's not music, it's not even a theme, it's a physical sensation. Then Lyra speaks, and you hear actual room tone again, the clink of cups, the wet slap of boots on wood. It's telling you, from minute one, that he's the supernatural weight in the room and she's the grounding force. You want the hook? Here it is. The entire tragedy starts because Kale, for one night, lets himself be a man instead of a king. That tavern scene is honestly one of the best acted, first connection, sequences I've seen in a while, because it's not written as flirting. It's written as two people circling a bruise. Kale asks her why she's selling medicine to drunks who won't pay. Lyra asks him why he's wearing gloves indoors. Their eyes keep landing on each other's hands. He has these faint scorch marks along his knuckles, dragon fire residue from holding back heat. She has herb stains under her nails. And the camera keeps cutting to these tiny inserts, his thumb rubbing the edge of a copper coin, her fingers tightening around a pouch of chamomile like it's a weapon. 4 episodes in, you realize the show has been quietly planting the real villain before you even know there's a plot: prophecy. In Valor, prophecy isn't a cute mystical garnish. It's law. They have an official seer called High Oracle Mailer, and his words are treated like contracts with the universe. There's a prophecy called the Ash Bride verse that's been haunting Kale since he took the throne. A soft-skinned star marked will split the crown, and from her womb will rise the ember that devours the king. Everyone hears that and immediately translates it into policy. Don't touch humans. Don't breed with humans. Don't even let humans into the mountain ring. The council is basically using it as a leash. So when Kale and Lyra end up outside the tavern in the cold, and the snow is coming down in these heavy flakes that blur the lantern light, it doesn't feel like fated romance. It feels like two people making a reckless choice because the alternative is going back to their lives. He walks her to her cart. She tells him her brother died begging for warmth. Kale's face does this micro-shift, like guilt, like anger, like he wants to say, I could have stopped that, and hates himself for thinking it. Then he does something very Kale, he offers her his cloak. It's this dark, thick thing that looks like it weighs more than she does. And she refuses it at first, not because she's stubborn, but because she's learned that accepting warmth from powerful men comes with strings. That's the first time the show tells you what Lyra's real trauma is, not just grief, but the constant negotiation of dignity in a world that barters it away. Wait until you see how the drama frames their first night, because it's not shot like a typical fantasy hookup. It's shot like a war truce. They take shelter in an abandoned watch cabin on the edge of the lowlands, one of those stone outposts left over from the last dragon-human conflict. The walls are cracked, the roof leaks, and there's an old iron brazier in the center that Kale lights with a snap of his fingers. Except he doesn't snap. He hesitates, and when the flame blooms, it's controlled, almost painfully contained. The camera lingers on his jaw, clenching like he's holding back a tsunami. Lyra warms her hands, and you can hear the fire pop, loud in the silence. She notices his gloves again, and instead of asking, she just reaches out and touches the edge of his wrist. It's a tiny gesture, but the actor playing Kale, Jin Seokmin in this fictional universe, and yes, he is doing that thing where his eyes look like they've lived longer than his face, reacts like she touched a bruise he's been hiding from himself. Then the show goes sensory in a way I loved. The cabin is lit by firelight, so everything is amber and shadow. Lyra's hair looks copper. Kale's skin looks almost scaled when the light moves, like the dragon underneath is a shimmer you can't quite focus on. There's no big swelling romantic track. The music pulls back and leaves you with breath and fabric and the creak of old wood. When they kiss, it's not a perfect choreographed kiss. It's messy. It's hungry. It's two people trying to drink warmth from each other. And I know, passionate night is the tagline, but the reason it matters is because it's also the night Kale stops performing control. He takes off the gloves. His hands are warm in a way that looks unnatural, like a living furnace. Lyra doesn't flinch. She's the first person in the whole story who doesn't treat his heat like a threat. There's a moment, blink and you'll miss it, where he brushes his thumb over the inside of her wrist and pauses. The camera pushes in on her pulse. And then he says, very quietly, "You're alive," like a song. Corny on paper. On screen, with the way he says it like it hurts, it lands. And then, because this is Deny Me, Dragon King, the show takes that warmth and slams it into the machinery of power. The next morning, Kale is gone before she wakes. Not in a, I'm a player, way. In a, I'm terrified of what I just did, way. He leaves behind a ring, not a proposal ring, but a talon band, a dragon signet that marks debt and protection. It's basically the dragon equivalent of saying, if anyone harms you, they answer to me. Lyra doesn't even fully understand what it is. She thinks it's payment. She actually gets offended. She throws it into her satchel anyway because she needs metal to trade for food. That detail matters later in the most painful way. Back in Valor, Kale returns to a court already hungry to devour him. We meet Seraphine of House Valkyrin, the official, almost queen, the noble dragon woman the council has been pushing at him for years. And I need to say this up front because the easy read is to hate Seraphine. She's not written as a cartoon. She's written as a woman raised to believe her body is a political instrument. She's cold, yes. She's strategic, yes. But she's also been promised a crown since she was 15. Kale rejecting her isn't just romantic rejection, it's social execution. High Oracle Mailer arrives with a vision. He claims the Ash Bride verse has clarified. The soft-skinned star-marked is near. The Ember Child will be born soon. The king will be undone. The council panics. Seraphine's father, Lord Valkyrin, basically pounces on the moment to demand Kale marry Seraphine immediately to anchor the bloodline. And here's the show's first big betrayal: Mailer is lying. Not in a "he misread the stars" way. In a deliberate, orchestrated, paid-for way. The drama eventually confirms he's been bribed by Kale's cousin, Prince Riven, who is technically next in line if Kale is declared spiritually compromised by prophecy. Riven is one of those pretty villains: soft smile, gentle voice, eyes like polished glass. He's the guy who offers you tea while he's poisoning your well. But at this stage, Kale doesn't know that. He only knows that he broke the most sacred law: he slept with a human. And the show makes a contrarian point that I actually appreciate: Kale's biggest flaw isn't cruelty. It's cowardice disguised as duty. He's not evil for casting Lyra out later. He's weak. He chooses the court's version of righteousness because it's easier than choosing love and facing the fallout. And that's where the fake prophecy trap becomes genius in a nasty way. Because the prophecy didn't have to be true to ruin them. It only had to be believed. So Kale sends scouts into the lowlands, not to protect Lyra, but to find her and remove the threat. The language they use is chilling: containment. They talk about her like she's a disease vector. When they finally bring her to Valor, it isn't romantic. It's a forced audience. Lyra is escorted through the basalt corridors of the palace, and the camera shoots it like a prison transfer: tight framing, harsh torchlight, the echo of boots. She's small in the frame. The throne room is cavernous, carved with dragon skeleton motifs and molten gold veins in the stone. Lyra sees Kale on the throne and you can watch her brain do the math in real time: tavern stranger, warmth, hands, firelight, king. The betrayal hits her before he even speaks. The actress playing Lyra, Park So-yeon in this fictional cast, does this thing with her eyes where they don't widen dramatically. They just go flat. Like the world lost a color. And Kale. Kale looks like someone nailed him to his own crown. He can't even stand up. He stays seated, because standing would be admitting he's a man with feelings, and the court cannot be allowed to see that. Mailer steps forward and asks Lyra to show her wrist. She doesn't understand. A guard grabs her. Lyra jerks away and the sleeve tears, revealing a faint birthmark near her pulse, 5-point, pale against her skin. The star mark. Lyra didn't even know it mattered. In Brinewick, it was just a mark that made kids tease her. In Valor, it's a death sentence wrapped in poetry. Kale's face hardens. And this is where the show does something that made me genuinely mad in the moment, which is good because it means it worked. Kale doesn't ask her a single question. He doesn't say, "Who are you? Were you sent?" He doesn't even let her speak. He just hears prophecy and chooses fear. He says the title line, his version of it, without raising his voice: deny her. He orders her cast out beyond the Ember Gate, which is basically the palace's outer boundary where the air turns thin and the lava vents start. He strips her of the Talon band as if it's evidence. He tells the court she tempted him under false pretenses. And Lyra, standing there with her torn sleeve and her hands shaking, looks at him like she's watching a man commit suicide in slow motion. Here's a rehook for you: the exile isn't even the worst part. The worst part is what Kale does to make sure she can't come back. As Lyra is dragged away, Seraphine steps in with a smile that's polite enough to be venom and whispers something to the guards. Later we find out she ordered them to make it unforgettable, so Lyra would never try again. They shove her through the Ember Gate during a storm. The wind is so loud it drowns out dialogue, and the show chooses to let it. There's no heroic score, just nature swallowing her. Lyra falls on the black ash slope, coughs, claws at the ground, and for a second you think Cale will stop it. He doesn't. He watches. His hand grips the arm of the throne so hard the stone cracks. And that crack becomes a visual motif for him all season, the king breaking himself to appear unbroken. Lyra survives because she's Lyra. She uses the herbs in her satchel, wraps her face, follows the mountain's drainage lines the way she learned as a kid. And when she finally collapses at the edge of the lowlands, the camera tilts up and shows Valor in the distance, this impossible, steaming fortress. It looks like a god's throat. And she whispers, "Horse, never again." Then the drama hits you with the time skip set up in the cruelest way. It doesn't do a neat jump yet. It makes you live with her aftermath first. Lyra goes back to Brinewick and finds out her home has been raided by the Human Inquisition. Yes, humans have their own monsters. They are called the White Mantles, a religious militia that claims dragon blood corrupts the soul. They've been hunting anyone accused of consorting with dragons. Lyra's neighbor sells her out for a bag of grain. She barely escapes with her life. She ends up in a coastal slum called Drift Market, where she works in a back alley clinic run by an old midwife named Nessa. And that's where she realizes she's pregnant. The pregnancy arc is handled with more tenderness than I expected from a show that started with palace humiliation. Lyra isn't glowing. She's terrified. She's furious. She vomits from morning sickness and then laughs, this sharp, ugly laugh, because of course the Dragon King's child would announce itself like a curse. Nessa tells her to get rid of it. Not because she's heartless, but because she's seen what the world does to women and children who don't fit. Lyra's face goes still and she says, "I've buried one child already." That line broke me a little. Not in a melodramatic way. In a, my chest tightened and I had to pause, way. Because suddenly her brother's death isn't backstory. It's a wound guiding every choice. And Amber is born in a scene that's both gorgeous and horrifying. There's a storm again. This show loves storms when it wants to cleanse sin, and the clinic's lanterns flicker as if something in the air is feeding on flame. Lyra screams, and the sound design layers in this faint crackling, like distant firewood. When Amber finally arrives, she's small, red-faced, and for 1 second looks normal. Then her eyes open. They are not baby blue or brown. They are molten gold with slit pupils. Nessa drops the towel like it burned her. Lyra, shaking, reaches out anyway. Amber's first cry isn't a normal cry. It's pitched slightly lower, and the windows rattle. A tiny puff of heat fogs the air. The camera pushes close on Lyra's face, sweat, tears, hair stuck to her cheeks, and you see it, fear, yes, but also awe. And then she smiles. It's not a happy smile. It's a warrior's smile. Like she just decided something. Lyra wraps Amber in cloth and whispers, "You are not a monster." And the show, in that moment, tells you what it's really about, found family as defiance. Now, you'd think the next step is, Lyra raises Amber in secret for years, and yes, that happens, but the drama doesn't treat those years as a montage you can skip. It makes them matter. Amber grows fast, dragon blood accelerates development, and by age 5 she's already reading. By 6 she's taller than other kids. She has small horn nubs that Lyra hides under scarves. When she gets angry, the air around her warms. When she laughs, candles flare. The show uses this clever visual thing where Amber's warmth is represented by a subtle bloom in the color grade. The frame literally gets more saturated when she's happy. When she's sick or scared, everything cools down toward gray-blue. And Lyra becomes, honestly, one of my favorite depictions of a fantasy mom in a long time. She's not soft. She's not saintly. She's exhausted and sometimes sharp with Amber because she's terrified of what a single mistake could cost. There's a scene where Amber accidentally melts a tin cup at a market stall, and Lyra grabs her wrist too hard and hisses, "Do you want them to kill you?" Amber's eyes fill with tears, not because Lyra hurt her physically, but because she heard the word, kill, from her mother's mouth. Lyra immediately regrets it and pulls Amber close. The camera stays on Lyra's face as she stares into the distance, like she's seeing the throne room again. Here's where I'm going to drop my surprising take, because it's easy to frame Lyra as pure victim and Kale as pure villain. The show actually doesn't do that, and I think that's why it works. Lyra, for all her righteousness, also builds a life around secrecy and control. She loves Amber, but she also shapes Amber's world with fear. She teaches her to hide, to shrink, to swallow her fire. That's survival, yes, but it's also a kind of inherited trauma being passed down. And the drama is brave enough to show that even the good parent can accidentally cage their child. Years pass. Amber is 8 when the sickness begins. It starts as nosebleeds. Then fevers at night. Then her scales, yes, she develops faint scale patches along her shoulder blades, start turning silver, like frost. Nessa, older now and slower, tells Lyra she's seen this once in a sailor who had dragon blood in his family. She calls it silver fever, a condition where dragon fire gets trapped in the body because the bloodline can't fully stabilize without contact with the dragon source. It's basically magical autoimmune collapse. The cure is rare and cruel, heart-forge healing, performed by a dragon healer using the blood of the child's direct dragon parent. So Lyra has a choice. Let her daughter die quietly in a human slum, or go back to the mountain and beg the man who destroyed her life to save the child he doesn't know exists. And can I confess something? I'm a sucker for plots where the heroine has to walk back into the place that broke her. Not because it's romantic. Because it's humiliating. Because it's the kind of courage that isn't glamorous. It's just necessity. Watching Lyra pack her satchel with herbs and cloth and tiny amber stones Amber likes to hold when she's scared, I felt that in my teeth. That's not strong female lead branding. That's a mother doing math with grief. So Lyra takes Amber to Valor. The return sequence is peak production value, by the way. You can tell they spent money here. The camera follows them through the mountain pass, and the sound shifts from seabirds and market noise to wind and distant rumbles. The color palette turns stark, black rock, white steam, red cracks of lava. Amber, weak but curious, keeps staring up. Lyra keeps pulling her hood down. Every few minutes, Amber coughs and a faint spark slips out, like her body is leaking fire. They reach the Ember Gate, the same place Lyra was thrown out, and the show mirrors the earlier exile scene but flips the emotional weight. Before, Lyra was forced out in shame. Now she steps in by choice, carrying the proof of what Kale did, and she's not asking permission from fate. She's daring it to stop her. The guards recognize the Talon band. Because yes, she kept it. Not as jewelry, but as a key. That ring becomes such a loaded object in this story. It's the thing Kale tried to erase, and it's the thing that opens the door anyway. Inside the palace, everything is the same and different. The corridors still echo. The walls still gleam with molten veins. But Kale's court is more militarized now. There are more soldiers. More banners. The ceasefire with humans is fraying. Rumors of half-breed children have triggered panic on both sides. And Kale himself? When we see him again, he's harsher around the edges. His hair is longer. There's a scar along his throat, later revealed to be from an assassination attempt by Riven's faction. He's still beautiful in that cold, carved way, but he looks like he hasn't slept since the night in the cabin. Lyra is brought into the throne room again, and I love how the director stages it. The camera stays behind Lyra this time. We see Kale's throne through her perspective, and it's not awe. It's rage. She walks forward with Amber bundled in her arms, and the court murmurs like a hive. Kale stands. He actually stands. And for a split second you think, oh, he's going to apologize. He doesn't. Not yet. He sees Lyra and his whole body goes rigid, like his instincts recognized a wound. His eyes flick down to her hands. Then, this is the moment that got me, his gaze lands on Amber's face. Amber is pale, sweating. Her hood slips, revealing a tiny horn nub. She looks up at Kale with those molten gold eyes. Kale freezes like someone punched the air out of him. The sound design drops the furnace hum and replaces it with a high, thin ringing. It's like the world narrowed to a single truth. Seraphine, standing to Cale's right like an ice sculpture with a pulse, notices too. Her eyes sharpen. Her jaw tightens. And you can watch her calculating the political apocalypse in real time. Lyra doesn't bow. She doesn't kneel. She says, voice steady, I need the palace healer. My daughter is dying. The throne room erupts. Elders hiss about contamination. Counselors demand the child be removed. Cale's captain of guard, Thorn, yes, his name Thorn, the show is not subtle, steps forward and reaches for Amber. Lyra flinches back and pulls a knife from her boot with a speed that makes everyone pause. Cale lifts a hand and the room stills. And here's the wild thing, Cale, the man who once said, deny her, now says, bring them to the Sunwell chambers. He doesn't say, kill them. He doesn't say, banish them. He doesn't even say, arrest them. He chooses containment again, but this time it's protection. What does that mean? Is he already softening? Is he trying to hide them? Or is he trying to control the situation before the council does? That tension, love versus management, is basically Cale's entire arc. Lyra is escorted to the Sunwell, a healing chamber carved around a natural geothermal spring that glows faintly gold. The cinematography here is stunning, steam curls around pillars, light reflects off water like moving metal, and the whole place feels sacred and dangerous. Amber is laid on a stone bed near the spring, and the palace healer arrives, Mirren, a dragon physician with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that look like tired moons. Mirren is one of my favorite supporting characters because she's the only person in this palace who speaks like she's not auditioning for power. She's blunt. She's kind in a no-nonsense way. She examines Amber and immediately knows the truth. She needs Heartforge, Mirren says. And she needs it from her father. Lyra's face goes blank. Cale's face goes white-hot. He turns to Lyra slowly, like his neck is made of stone. What did you bring into my palace? He asks, voice low. Lyra doesn't flinch. Your child, she says. The ember that was supposed to devour you. And the way Cale reacts here is why I can't fully hate him, even after everything. He doesn't rage at Lyra. He rages at himself. He steps back like the air became heavy. He whispers, almost inaudible, 8 years. Like he just realized he lost 8 years of his daughter's life because he believed a man in a robe. Rehook me for the people scrolling, the drama doesn't let this reveal become a clean reunion. It makes it a threat to everyone in the room. Because Amber is living evidence that the Ash Bride prophecy came true. The council hears about it within hours. Seraphine hears about it within minutes. Prince Riven hears about it because he has spies in the healing chambers, yes, the man is that level of roach. Suddenly Lyra and Amber aren't just personal. They are political leverage, religious panic, and a succession crisis. Cale orders Amber's existence kept secret, which is funny because it's the least secret in palace history. He assigns Captain Thorn to guard the Sunwell. He tells Mirren to prepare Heartforge. And then he does the one thing Lyra didn't expect, he asks to speak to Lyra alone. Their confrontation scene in the corridor outside the Sunwell is fire. No pun intended, but also yes pun intended. The corridor is lit by vertical slits of lava light from the mountain core, so their faces are striped with orange and black like they are already behind bars. Cale steps close. Lyra doesn't back away. The camera stays tight, and you can see the tremor in Lyra's jaw. Cale says, "Why didn't you come sooner?" Lyra laughs. "It's the ugliest sound." "Because you threw me out like trash," she says. "Because you watched. Because you didn't even ask my name before you decided I was your doom." Cale's eyes flash, literal dragon flare, and the torches flicker. "I did what I had to," he says. And Lyra, with the calm of someone who's had 8 years to rehearse this moment in nightmares, replies, "You did what was easiest." That line hits harder than any slap scene. Because it's true, and Cale knows it's true. The actor sells it by not reacting theatrically. He just inhales sharply, like he swallowed ash. Then Kale does something that shocked me the first time. He apologizes. Not a full grovel. Not a poetic speech. He says, "I was wrong." 3 words. Simple. Raw. It's the first time we hear him speak without the king's performance. Lyra doesn't melt. She doesn't forgive him on the spot. She says, "Save her. Then we can talk about wrong." And I loved that. The show doesn't cheapen Lyra's pain just to get us back to romance. It makes Kale earn every inch. The Heartforge ritual itself is teased for a couple episodes, building dread. Mirren explains it like a surgeon explaining a risky procedure. Kale will have to open his dragon core, the internal furnace organ dragons have, and channel raw flame into Amber's bloodstream to burn out the silver rot. If he gives too little, she dies. If he gives too much, she burns from the inside. Also, opening the core makes him vulnerable. A dragon with an open core can be killed by a single well-placed blade of dragon steel. So of course, politically, it's insane to do it. And emotionally, it's worse, because it requires intimacy. Kale will have to hold his daughter and literally share his heat. Seraphine, meanwhile, goes into full Ice Queen warfare mode. But again, not cartoon. She approaches Kale privately and says, "A human child will unravel you." Not, "I hate her." Not, "Kill them." She frames it as duty. She frames it as survival. And the show lets you see her fear. If Kale bonds with this child, Seraphine loses her last bargaining chip. She becomes irrelevant. In Dragon Court terms, irrelevance is death. Prince Riven pushes from the shadows. He meets with Oracle Mailer in a hidden chamber lined with bones, because of course, and reminds him that the prophecy must be fulfilled publicly. Riven wants the council to declare Kale cursed. He wants to present himself as the pure blood alternative. And the nastiest detail the show confirms later is that Riven orchestrated the original vision that got Lyra exiled. He didn't just manipulate Kale. He weaponized Kale's worst insecurity, the fear of being a king who chooses love over law. There's also a human side threat that I appreciated because it keeps the world from feeling like it exists only inside the palace. The White Mantles catch wind of a half-dragon child entering Valor and decide it's the perfect excuse to launch a holy strike at the mountain border. Their leader, Prelate Garin, is introduced preaching to a crowd with dragon bones behind him like trophies. He talks about purity the way villains always do, and yet the show doesn't make him fun evil. He's terrifying because he's banal. He truly believes he's saving souls. That's the kind of enemy that doesn't negotiate. So Kale is squeezed from every side: council tradition, Seraphine's clan, Riven's ambition, human militias, and his own guilt. And then Amber, even sick, starts changing everything with one small choice: she decides she likes Kale. This is where the drama gets dangerously good, because it could have made Amber a plot object. Instead, Amber is a person. She's curious. She's blunt. She's lonely. She has a child's selfishness and a child's wisdom mixed together in a way that feels real. When Kale visits the Sunwell, he tries to stand far away like a respectful king. Amber, sweating and weak, lifts her hand and croaks, "Come closer. You're warm." Kale walks over like he's stepping into a trap. Amber touches his hand with her tiny fingers and sighs. The color grade warms. The furnace hum returns, but softer. Kale's face shifts into something we've never seen on him: tenderness without performance. He looks at her like she's a miracle and a crime at the same time. Lyra watches from the doorway, arms crossed, and you can see her in a war. She wants Amber to have her father. She hates that her daughter wants him. She hates that she understands why. And can we talk about how the show shoots their triangle? Because yes, it's a triangle, but not the usual kind. The blocking is intentional. Lyra often stands at thresholds, doorways, archways, edges of rooms, like she's always half ready to run. Kale stands in the center, trying to anchor. Amber moves between them, literally bridging space. It's such a simple visual language, but it tells you everything about their emotional geometry. Then the jealousy plots start, and honestly, this is where a lot of dramas get messy. Deny me, Dragon King mostly keeps it sharp by tying jealousy to stakes. Seraphine doesn't just throw tantrums. She leverages court protocol. She petitions the council to have Amber tested for corruption. That test, in dragon culture, is basically torture, exposing the child to cold iron and holy ash to see if their dragon fire reacts purely. Mirren warns it could kill Amber in her state. Kale refuses publicly, which is a huge political move. The council snarls. Lord Valkyrin threatens to withdraw military support. Seraphine smiles like she expected Kale to refuse, because refusal was the point. It gives her and her clan grounds to claim Kale is compromised. Lyra, seeing the trap, tries to pull Amber out of the palace that night. And here's a moment that made me respect the writing. Lyra doesn't suddenly become a palace mastermind. She's still a lowland woman in a stone maze. She gets lost. She takes a wrong corridor. And she ends up face to face with Prince Riven. Riven greets her like an old friend. He calls her Little Star. He says he's sorry for what happened to her, which is such a specific kind of villainy, comfort offered by the hand that lit the fire. Lyra immediately doesn't trust him, because she has street instincts. Riven offers her a deal: leave Amber behind, and he will ensure Amber receives healing. Lyra's eyes go cold. She says, "You want a child as a banner?" Riven laughs softly and replies, "All children are banners. Some just don't know it yet." That line is the show in one sentence, honestly. Everyone is trying to turn Amber into a symbol. Lyra is the only one trying to keep her a child. Rehook time. You think the danger is the council and the rival prince, but the show's most vicious twist in the first half is what happens when Amber starts hearing the mountain. Yes. Hearing it. Amber, half-dragon, has a resonance with Valor itself. The mountain is alive in dragon lore, an ancient sleeping Wyrm called Varos beneath the palace, the source of dragon fire. Dragons commune with it during coronations. Kale has done it. It nearly killed him. Amber begins having dreams where she walks through ash fields and hears a deep voice calling her, Little Ember. She starts drawing spirals and teeth and eyes on scraps of paper. Lyra finds the drawings and panics, because in the lowlands, those symbols are associated with the old dragon cults, groups that worshipped dragons as gods and performed human sacrifices. Mirren sees the drawings and goes pale. She tells Kale the resonance is activating early because Amber's blood is unstable. The mountain is trying to claim her. If that bond forms before Amber is healed, it could fuse her to Valor permanently, turning her into a living conduit for dragon fire. Which sounds epic until you realize the subtext: it would erase her humanity. It would erase the part of her that laughs at silly stories and likes cinnamon buns from Drift Market. It would turn her into a political artifact. Kale, hearing this, makes another choice that's half love, half control. He orders Amber move deeper into the palace, into a warded chamber called the Hearth Vault, where the mountain's voice is muffled. Lyra freaks out because it feels like imprisonment. Kale insists it's protection. Their arguments get louder, sharper, more honest. And the chemistry between these two actors is ridiculous. Because even when they're yelling, the camera catches these micro-pauses where their bodies lean in like magnets. They hate each other, but their cells remember the cabin. There's a scene where Lyra gets in Kale's face and says, "You don't get to decide what happens to her," and Kale replies, "I am her father," and Lyra snaps, "You were her father the moment you chose prophecy over me." The silence after that is so thick you could cut it. Kale looks like he's about to collapse. Lyra's eyes shine, but she refuses to cry. And then Amber coughs from the bed behind them, and they both turn instantly, synchronized. That's the heartbreak. No matter how broken their love is, their instincts align when it comes to her. The Heartforge ritual finally begins at the end of what feels like the drama's first major arc. It's staged like both a medical procedure and a religious ceremony. The Sunwell chamber is sealed. Mirren draws runes with molten gold around Amber's bed. Kale removes his crown. That detail mattered to me because it's the first time he's physically rejecting the role. He kneels beside Amber. He looks at Lyra and says, hold her hand. Not, stand back. Not, leave. He asks Lyra to be part of it. Lyra hesitates. Then she steps forward and takes Amber's small fingers. Amber tries to smile. Don't fight, she whispers, to both of them, like she's been listening to their arguments and decided she's tired. That line made me laugh a little in disbelief, because only in dramas do 8-year-olds become tiny therapists, but the actress playing Amber sells it with this fragile sincerity that made me forgive the trope. Cale places his palm over Amber's chest and closes his eyes. The furnace hum grows louder. The lights in the chamber flicker. Steam rises faster. Cale's veins glow faintly red beneath his skin, like lava under rock. He inhales, and when he exhales, you see heat ripple out of him in waves. The show gets quiet here. The music drops out. You hear Lyra's breathing. You hear Amber's weak little gasps. You hear the crackle of runes igniting. Then Cale opens his dragon core. Visually, they represent it with a glowing sigil blooming at the base of his throat, spreading like firework roots down his collarbones. He grimaces, not because it's painful in a normal way, but because it's vulnerability. He's exposed. And you can see it in the actor's posture, shoulders slightly hunched, chin lowered, like he's bracing for a blow. Amber's body arches as the heat enters her. She screams. Lyra grips her hand so tightly her knuckles go white. Tears spill down Lyra's face and she doesn't wipe them away because she can't. Cale whispers, over and over, stay. 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 Not to Amber. To himself. To his core. To his control. And right when it seems like it's working, right when the silver in Amber's scales starts to fade back to warm copper, Captain Thorne bursts into the chamber with blood on his armor. Your Majesty, he gasps. The council is moving. Lord Valkyrin has invoked the right of purity. They are coming for the child. Cale doesn't break the ritual. He can't. If he stops, Amber dies. If he continues, he's defenseless. Lyra turns, eyes wild, and for the first time you see her truly consider violence inside the palace. Mirren swears under her breath and starts reinforcing the runes. And outside the sealed doors, you hear it, boots. Metal. A chant. This is where Deny Me, Dragon King earns its title all over again, because the story isn't asking, will Cale love Lyra? It's asking, what will Cale sacrifice to protect the family he already denied once? Cale's eyes snap open, glowing. Lyra meets his gaze, and in that single look there's 8 years of hatred and 1 night of warmth and 1 sick child between them. Cale, still channeling fire into Amber, speaks through clenched teeth. If they cross that threshold, he says, I will burn my own court to ash. And the insane part is, you believe him. And the insane part is, you believe him. Because the drama has spent enough time showing you what Cale's restraint costs him that when he finally threatens to stop restraining himself, it lands like a landslide. The sound design even shifts, the furnace hum that's usually this background presence surges forward, and for a second it's not romantic anymore. It's predatory. It's the reminder that a Dragon King is only civil as long as he chooses to be. The doors to the Sunwell chamber shudder under the first impact. You hear metal scraping rune-etched stone, and Mirren's eyes flick to the ceiling like she's calculating how many hits the wards can take. Captain Thorne plants himself in front of the entrance with his spear angled down, and I have to give the show credit, Thorne doesn't do the usual, loyal guard who talks big and then dies instantly. He's competent. He's scared, but he's competent. His voice cracks when he calls out, by royal seal, stand down. And outside, the reply is a chorus, not a single voice, elder counselors chanting the rite of purity as if they are washing their hands. Lyra doesn't waste time arguing. She moves like someone back in Drift Market when a raid hits, fast, silent, practical. She grabs a tray of Mirren's instruments, flips it, and palms a thin blade meant for lancing scale infections. She looks at Cale. He's still channeling heat into Amber, jaw clenched so hard you see the tendon jumping. He gives her a tiny nod. Not permission, exactly. Recognition. Like he's finally acknowledging she's not a liability, she's a partner in keeping their child alive. Amber's scream turns hoarse. The silver on her scales is receding, but it's not gone. Every time it fades, the runes flare, and the chamber lights pulse like a heartbeat. Mirren whispers, "Steady, Majesty, steady," like she's talking to a skittish horse. And Kale, eyes burning, answers under his breath, "I am steady." It's a line that could be arrogant, but the way Jin Seokmin delivers it, tight throat, almost shaking, makes it sound like a lie he's forcing into truth. Second impact. The doors crack. Not fully, but enough that ash dust shakes loose from the frame like the palace itself is flinching. And then Seraphine arrives. She doesn't come screaming. She doesn't storm in with claws out. She glides into the corridor outside the sunwell with that courtly stillness that always reads like she was born standing on marble. She's flanked by Veilcrin's soldiers in ceremonial armor, and behind them, elder counselors draped in white and gold sashes. The camera goes low, tracking her feet as her gown skims the floor, because the show wants you to feel the inevitability of her. Seraphine is not chaos. Seraphine is law, dressed up as elegance. She calls through the cracked doors, voice smooth as cooled metal. "Kale. End the sacrilege. Step away from the abomination." Lyra's hand tightens around the lancing blade. Captain Thorne snarls, "My lady, you cannot." Seraphine cuts him off with one look. Not even a shout. Just the quiet authority of someone who's been told her entire life she belongs closer to the throne than anyone else. "Move," she says. Thorne doesn't. And this is where the direction gets clever. It holds on Thorne's face as he makes the decision to defy a high clan. You can see him thinking of consequences, his family, his rank, his throat. Then he squares his shoulders anyway. "No," he says. One syllable, and the entire corridor goes cold. Seraphine's gaze slides past him to the door crack, to the flicker of sunwell light. "Then you are choosing a human over your king," she replies, sweetly. Thorne, without blinking, says, "I'm choosing the king over his council." That line is so clean it almost feels like a thesis statement, and I'm not mad at it because the show earned it. Kale's reign has been a tug-of-war between being king as position and being king as person. Thorne is basically saying, "I serve the person you keep burying." Inside the chamber, Kale hears Seraphine's voice and his heat spikes. The rooms flare brighter. Amber's body arches. Mirren hisses, "Control, Majesty." Kale's eyes flick to Lyra like he's about to say something, and Lyra, tears streaking down her cheeks, shakes her head sharply. "Don't talk. Don't break. Don't stop." Then, because this drama can never let you breathe for more than 10 seconds, the corridor erupts. Lord Veilcrin orders his soldiers forward. Steel hits spear. Thorne is knocked back against the door frame. The wards flash as someone slams a dragon steel blade into the runic seam. There's a burst of light that looks like a camera flash from hell. One of Veilcrin's men screams as the ward burns his palm raw. You smell it through the screen, at least, your brain supplies the smell, because the sound design adds this faint sizzle that makes your skin crawl. Lyra turns away from Amber for half a second to glance at the door, and that half second is enough for Amber's hand to slip in hers. Amber's fingers go limp. Lyra's face collapses. Not dramatically. Just a sudden emptying. She grabs Amber's hand again and whispers, "No, no, no," like she's bargaining with something that doesn't bargain. Kale sees it. He makes a choice that is both terrifying and, weirdly, intimate. He presses his palm harder to Amber's chest and lets more heat through. His core sigil brightens to near white. The steam in the chamber thickens so fast it looks like fog rolling in. Mirren's eyes widen. "If you overfeed." "I know," Kale snaps, voice raw. And then he does the thing dragons aren't supposed to do, he links. In Valor lore, there's a bond technique called the Ember Thread, an ancient practice used between mates or between dragon and hatchling, where the dragon channels not just heat but intent, memory, and a piece of their own life force. It's forbidden in modern court because it's undignified, and because it creates loyalty stronger than law. Kale uses it anyway, right there, in front of Mirren, in the heart of a palace that wants the child dead. Visually, the show represents the thread as a thin ribbon of light connecting Kale's throat sigil to Amber's sternum, pulsing softly like a heartbeat shared. The music finally returns, but it's not romantic, it's this mournful string line with a choir so faint it feels like ghosts humming. Amber gasps. Her eyes fly open. Molten gold, clearer than before. She coughs, and instead of sparks, a steady warmth ripples out. The silver patches fade down to freckles of pale shimmer. Her breathing steadies. Lyra lets out a sob so sharp it's almost a laugh. She presses her forehead to Amber's hand. Kale's shoulders sag as if he's been holding up the mountain and finally set it down. Outside, the warded doors crack again. And here's the rehook, because the show flips the danger from external to internal in a blink. Kale's ember thread makes Amber recognizable. That bond isn't just magical glue. It's a beacon. Dragons can sense it. The mountain can sense it. And, unfortunately, so can Oracle Mailer, who is standing in the corridor now with his palms raised, eyes rolled back, chanting the rite like he's conducting a choir of executioners. He whispers, "There. The thread." The prophecy breathes. Lyra hears his voice through the door and her stomach drops, because she recognizes it. It's the voice from her exile, the voice that turned a birthmark into a verdict. Kale, still kneeling, hears it too, and something in him hardens. Not rage, clarity. He looks at Mirren. "How long?" he asks. Mirren swallows. "Minutes," she says. "Before the thread stabilizes and the child's fire finds its rhythm." Kale nods once. He stands with the stiffness of someone whose bones are suddenly heavy. The glow at his throat dims but doesn't vanish, it's like a wound that refuses to close. He looks at Lyra and says, "Take her into the spring alcove. Behind the veil." Now. Lyra hesitates. "You're staying?" Kale's gaze flicks to the door. "I'm ending this," he says. Lyra's mouth opens as if she wants to argue. Then she sees his face, no performance left. Just a father with a newly discovered child and 8 years of guilt stacked behind his eyes. She gathers Amber into her arms carefully, like moving a candle through wind, and slips behind the stone veil that separates the main chamber from the deeper spring alcove. Kale steps forward to the door seam. He places his hand flat against the warded stone. The runes glow, responding to him like obedient insects. Mirren stands beside him, shaking, holding a small vial of something dark and thick, dragon anticoagulant, used when claws rip too deep. She looks like she wants to run and can't. Outside, Seraphine's voice cuts through again, sharper now. "Kale. If you open that door, you choose her. You choose exile from your own blood." Kale's expression doesn't change. He replies, so evenly it's chilling, "I chose exile once. It poisoned my reign." Seraphine, for the first time, sounds genuinely rattled. "You would burn Valor for a human?" Kale says, "For my child." And then he opens the door. The moment the seal breaks, the corridor's torchlight slashes into the sunwell like a knife, and the sound rushes in, boots, steel, chanting, the wet rasp of panic. Kale steps out into it alone. The staging here is immaculate. The camera stays behind Kale's shoulder, giving you his point of view, Seraphine centered in the frame, counselors flanking her, Thorn bleeding at the base of the door frame, Veilcrin soldiers with weapons raised. It looks like a courtroom, but everyone's armed. It's justice with teeth. Kale's voice is low. This right is suspended by royal decree. Elder Counselor Draven, a scarred old dragon with one eye clouded white, sneers. "A king cannot decree against fate." Kale's eyes flicker. "Then fate can come and argue with me personally." And I laughed. Not because it's a joke, but because it's the kind of dry, exhausted sarcasm that only lands when a character has finally stopped pretending. It's also a nice little self-aware moment from the writers, like, yes, we know prophecy is annoying, let him say it. Draven raises his staff. "You are compromised. You have tied your core to a creature born of ash and deceit. The council claims guardianship over Valor. Kale takes one step forward. The corridor heats. Torches flare. Sweat beads on soldiers' foreheads. Valkyrian men tighten their grips but don't advance, because every dragon in that hall can feel it. Kale's core is still partially open. He is a walking hazard. Seraphine holds his gaze. If you stand down, she says softly, we can contain this. We can say the child was a test of the prophecy, and you resisted. We can salvage your crown. Kale looks at her like he's seeing her clearly for the first time. You mean salvage your claim, he replies. Seraphine's smile falters. I have bled for your throne. Kale answers, no. You have bled for what you were promised. And this is where I'll be compassionate to Seraphine, because the show is. That line hits her like a slap, not because it's cruel, but because it's accurate. You see it in her eyes, hurt, rage, humiliation, and something like grief. For a second, she's not an antagonist. She's a woman realizing her entire life might have been a transaction she never consented to. Then Oracle Mela steps forward, hands still raised, and in tones, the Ember Child devours the king. The thread is proof. The mountain speaks. The crown must be broken before the realm is. Kale's gaze snaps to Mela. You, he says. Just that. And there's history in it. Mela's lips curl. I speak what I see. Kale's voice drops lower. Then tell me what you saw 8 years ago, he says, when you named her star-marked doom. Tell me, Oracle, how much gold did it cost to buy the stars? The corridor stills. Even Seraphine's eyes flick, sharp. Draven's staff trembles a fraction. Mela's expression doesn't change quickly enough. That's the tell. That tiny delay. And the camera catches it, tight close-up on his mouth, the corner of his lip twitching. Kale steps closer. You lied, he says, and each word is a hammer. You lied to my court. You lied to my crown. You used prophecy as a blade. Mela's voice rises. You would accuse the oracle. Kale cuts him off with a growl that is not fully human. I would burn you and call it cleansing. And here's where the show refuses to give you a clean hero moment. Because Kale is right, Mela is corrupt. But the way Kale threatens him is exactly what terrifies humans about dragons. Justice, yes. Also terror. The drama keeps both truths in frame, which is why it feels adult. Draven recovers first. He raises his staff and shouts, "Seize the king!" By council authority. Thorn, bleeding, lunges and blocks the first soldier. Valkyrian men surge forward. Kale lifts his hand. Fire doesn't explode. It doesn't roar. It snakes. A thin line of flame curls along the floor like a living thing, tracing the corridor's seams, climbing the stone in an instant. It forms a barrier between Kale and the council, an orange wall that doesn't burn the palace but makes the air shimmer so hard the faces behind it distort. The visuals here are gorgeous. The CGI is clean. The heat haze effect is so convincing you instinctively lean back. Kale speaks through the flame. No one enters the Sunwell, he says. Not today. Not ever. Seraphine's voice turns sharp. You would ignite civil war. Kale replies, if war is what it takes to keep my daughter breathing, then yes. And the moment he says, daughter, something shifts. It's not just a personal admission. It's a political declaration. In a realm obsessed with bloodline purity, acknowledging a half-human child is an act of rebellion. It's basically Kale ripping up the rulebook with his teeth. Lyra, behind the veil, hears it. Her eyes close. You can't tell if she's relieved or furious or both. Amber, weak but conscious now, murmurs, he said it. Lyra whispers back, yes. He did. Then Amber asks, quietly, does that mean he stays? Lyra's throat tightens. It means he's trying, she says, and it's one of the most honest lines in the whole show. Not, he loves us. Not, he'll fix it. Just, trying. because that's all you can promise when someone has already broken you once. The standoff breaks when Prince Riven arrives. Of course he does. He always arrives like a ribbon on a knife. He walks into the corridor with a calm smile, hands open, as if he's here to mediate. Behind him are his own guards, black armor, less ceremonial, more practical. You can tell immediately these men aren't palace decor. They are trained for blood. Riven looks at the flame barrier and tilts his head. "Cousin," he says warmly. "You've made such a mess." Kale's eyes narrow. "You," he says, same as before but colder. Riven's gaze flicks past Kale toward the Sunwell door. "I heard a child cried," he says. "A special child." Kale's flame wall flares higher in response. "Turn around," he says. Riven sighs theatrically. "You can't hide her," he says softly. "The mountain will sing her name whether you want it to or not." That line is important because it confirms Riven knows about the resonance. He's been planning this long enough to know the rules of Amber's blood. Draven seizes on Riven's presence. "Prince Riven," he calls, as next at Pure Line, "you must." Riven lifts a hand gently, interrupting like a polite teacher. "Elder," he says, "let us not pretend this is about purity. This is about stability." Kale's heart has compromised his crown. Valor needs a king who will not be undone by a human face. Kale's jaw tightens. "Speak plainly," he says. "You want my throne." Riven's smile widens. "No," he says, and it's almost convincing. "I want Valor's survival. Your throne is simply in the way." And then Riven does the smartest villain move he could do in that moment. He offers mercy as a weapon. He calls out, loud enough for the entire corridor to hear, "Kale. Step aside. Hand over the child. The council will cleanse the corruption. I will ensure the human mother is not executed. She will be returned to her kind." Returned? Like she's property being shipped. Lyra hears it from behind the veil and her blood goes ice cold. She clutches Amber tighter. Amber's small fingers curl into Lyra's sleeve. Kale's eyes burn. "No," he says. Riven nods, as if disappointed but not surprised. "Then you choose rebellion," he says. He turns to his guards. "Take the Sunwell." And suddenly, it's not a ritual standoff anymore. It's a coup attempt. The next sequence is one of the best action set pieces in the drama, and it works because it isn't just bodies flying around. It's character decisions under pressure. Thorn fights like a man buying seconds with his own blood. Mirren, who you'd think would just cower, grabs a rune-etched brazier chain and swings it at a soldier's wrist to disarm him, then immediately looks shocked at herself like, "Did I just do that?" Seraphine stands frozen for one heartbeat, caught between clan loyalty and the realization that Riven is trying to seize power right in front of her. Kale, still partially open cord, is forced to fight without fully unleashing dragon fire, because if he goes too far, he could collapse the corridor, kill his own people, and, most importantly, send a surge through the ember thread to Amber. He is literally tethered. His power has a cost now. And that tether dynamic? That's the show's most satisfying narrative karma. The man who once used duty to cut Lyra loose now has duty tied to a child's heartbeat. He can't be careless. He can't be purely wrathful. He has to be precise. Love forces discipline. It's such a good reversal. Kale moves like controlled violence, short bursts of flame to blind, heat waves to push soldiers back, claws partially shifted to parry dragon steel. The choreography makes a point of his restraint. He knocks people down, doesn't incinerate them. He's fighting his own nature and his political enemies at once. Riven doesn't fight. He watches. That's his whole thing. He's the kind of villain who believes he shouldn't have to get his hands dirty because the world should arrange itself around him. Lyra, behind the veil, hears the chaos and realizes the warded chamber is no longer safe. The Sunwell's veil isn't a fortress. It's a curtain. If someone breaches the inner door, she and Amber are trapped. So Lyra does the thing that defines her, she adapts. She spots a narrow service tunnel behind the spring alcove, a maintenance passage for the geothermal vents. Nessa once told her about dragon architecture. They build pretty halls for ceremonies and ugly tunnels for survival. Lyra lifts the stone grate with shaking hands, curses quietly because it's heavy as sin, and slips through with Amber. Amber whispers, "Where are we going?" Lyra answers, "Away." Amber swallows. "Without him?" Lyra pauses. You see the pain cross her face like a shadow. Then she says, "To keep you alive." And that's where the show hits me personally again, in a way I didn't expect. Because I've never been a parent, but I know what it's like to love someone and still choose distance because staying is dangerous. There's a scene later that echoes this choice, and I'm telling you now, the writers understand that sometimes love looks like leaving. Not as punishment. As protection. That's a hard truth dramas often flatten into noble sacrifice fluff. Here, it's messy and it hurts. The tunnel sequence is filmed like a horror crawl. The passage is low, damp, lit by faint magma glow through cracks. Steam condenses on Lyra's hair. Amber wheezes softly, and every wheeze sounds loud in that tight space. You hear distant fighting above like thunder. Lyra's knees scrape stone. She bites her lip hard enough to bleed because she refuses to make a sound. Then Amber, weakly, reaches out and touches the tunnel wall. The stone warms under her fingers. The resonance. The mountain recognizing her. Amber's eyes glaze for a second, and she whispers, "It's calling." Lyra freezes. "Amber," she hisses softly. "Don't listen." Amber's voice turns eerie, layered with something deeper. It says, "Home." Lyra's face contorts. "This is not your home," she whispers fiercely. "I am your home. Hear me. Look at me." Amber blinks, comes back, and starts crying silently. "It's loud," she whispers. Lyra kisses her forehead. "I know," she says, and her voice breaks. "I know." Above, the coup intensifies. Riven's men push closer to the Sunwell doors. Kale's flame barrier wavers as his stamina drains. The ember thread pulses faintly, and Kale's hand trembles. Mirren yells something, but it's drowned by steel clash. Thorn takes a blow across the ribs and crumples. Kale turns, eyes wide, and for a second the camera lingers on his face. Panic. Not King Panic. Father Panic. He shouts, "Lyra." He doesn't know she's in the tunnel. He doesn't know if she's alive. And the fact that he calls her name, finally, her name, right in front of everyone, is such a quiet payoff. He didn't ask her name when he condemned her the first time. Now, in crisis, the name tears out of him like it's been lodged in his throat for 8 years. Seraphine hears it. Her expression flickers. It's like hearing your fiancé call someone else in his sleep. You can see her pride shatter by a hairline crack. Then Seraphine makes her move, and it's not the move you expect. She steps between Riven's guard line and the Sunwell door, raising her hand. "Enough," she commands. Riven's smile doesn't change, but his eyes sharpen. "Seraphine," he says gently, "don't be sentimental." Seraphine's voice turns razor cold. "This is not sentiment," she says. "This is treason. You are seizing the palace under the council's cloak." Riven tilts his head. "And you defending the king who humiliated you." Seraphine's jaw tightens. Then she says something that, honestly, I love because it's so in character. "I defend the throne. If I am to be queen, I will not inherit a realm ruled by a usurper." It's not altruism. It's ambition with principles. And that's why it works. She's not suddenly team love. She's team order, her order, but still order. Seraphine turns to her Valkyrian soldiers. "By my blood," she says, "stand with me." Half of them do. Half hesitate. Lord Valkyrin isn't present in the corridor, he's coordinating from the council chambers, but his influence is. You can see the soldiers' eyes flicker with fear of disobeying their clan head. The corridor splits into factions in real time. It's chaos, but it's political chaos, which is the most delicious kind in a fantasy palace. Riven exhales, as if bored. Fine, he murmurs. He gestures to one of his guards, who pulls a small object from his sleeve and flings it toward Kale's flame barrier. It's a cold iron orb. In this world, cold iron is poison to dragon fire. It doesn't just resist heat. It eats it. The orb hits the barrier and blooms into a grey frost that spreads like mold. The flame sputters, collapses in spots, and suddenly the corridor's heat drops so fast you see breath. Kale's eyes widen. His core sigil flickers. The ember thread pulses erratically. Mirren screams, no. Because cold iron doesn't just weaken Kale's flame. It disrupts the thread. It yanks at the bond like a hook. Down in the tunnel, Amber convulses. Her eyes roll back. The silver patches flare again. Lyra gasps, clutching her. Amber. Amber wheezes, voice barely there. Hurts, she whispers. Lyra's panic goes feral. She doesn't know what's happening, only that the palace is hurting her child from a distance. She scrambles forward in the tunnel, not even sure where it leads, just desperate to get away from the mountain's core. Back in the corridor, Kale roars, not a human shout, a dragon roar that shakes dust from the ceiling. The camera shakes with it. Riven's guards flinch despite themselves. Kale lunges toward the cold iron frost and slams his palm into it. His skin blisters instantly. You hear the sizzle. You see the flesh charge in. Siakmin sells it with this involuntary jerk of pain, eyes watering, teeth bared. He doesn't pull away. He presses harder, forcing heat into poison, burning through the cold iron spread with sheer will. The frost retreats in crackling fragments. The flame barrier reignites. And in the tunnel, Amber's convulsion eases. Lyra feels it. She doesn't understand the mechanics, but she knows the pain eased at the same time the corridor shook. She whispers, "He's fighting," like she can feel it through blood. There's something so intimate about that. Not romance. Family. A body remembering its own. Riven, watching Kale burn himself to protect a bond, finally looks irritated. You always were dramatic, he mutters. He signals again, and two of his guards peel away, not toward Kale, but toward the side corridor that leads to the palace ventilation shafts. They're not trying to win the standoff. They're trying to intercept Lyra and Amber's escape route. This is where the editing gets fast and a little messy, and it's one of my few real critiques in this stretch. The show cuts between corridor battle, Sunwell interior, tunnel crawl, and shaft pursuit in a way that sometimes loses spatial clarity. The emotion is clear, but the geography isn't always. If you're the kind of viewer who gets annoyed when action becomes a montage of steel sounds and close-ups of boots, you might start squinting here. I didn't mind too much because the performances keep it grounded, but yeah, this is the first time the direction slightly trips over its own ambition. Lyra reaches the end of the tunnel and pushes up another grate into a storage chamber lined with ceremonial banners and old armor. Dust floats in the air, lit by a narrow skylight. It's quiet, too quiet. She freezes. Amber whispers, "Someone's here." Lyra backs up, knife ready. Two shadows move behind the banners. Riven's guards step out, dragon steel blades drawn. Lyra's entire body goes still. Not because she's surrendering. Because she's measuring distance, exits, oxygen. She sets Amber down gently behind a stack of armor crates and whispers, "Don't move. Don't breathe fire. No matter what." Amber's eyes fill with tears. She nods, biting her lip so hard it turns white. The guards advance. One says, "By Prince Riven's order." Lyra throws a pouch of powdered herb into the air. It explodes in a cloud of pale green dust, sleepwort and bitter ash mixed. The guards cough. One staggers. The other swings blindly. Lyra ducks, slides under his arm, and slashes his thigh with the lancing blade. It's not a lethal wound, but it drops him. She grabs a fallen spear from the wall and jams the blunt end into the first guard's throat, not stabbing, just choking him long enough to disarm. It's scrappy. It's ugly. It's human. And it's so satisfying, because the show never pretends Lyra can outfight trained palace assassins with martial arts perfection. She wins because she's a healer who understands bodies and because she fights like someone who's had to survive bigger men in alleyways. She uses dust. She uses angles. She uses pain points. It's character-consistent action, which is my favorite kind. Then the second guard, coughing through the herb cloud, lifts his blade and goes for Amber. Lyra's heart stops. She screams, "No!" Amber, terrified, instinctively raises her hands. A small flare of fire bursts out, not a controlled dragon flame, but a child's panic ignition. It hits the banner behind the guard and the fabric erupts. The guard recoils. The room fills with smoke. The fire alarm rooms, yes, the palace has magical fire suppression, activate, and a cold mist sprays from the ceiling. The sudden temperature shift makes Amber gasp. Silver flickers along her shoulder. Lyra grabs Amber again and runs. They sprint through back corridors, smoke and mist trailing behind, and the camera follows in a shaky handheld style that makes it feel immediate, like you're running too. They burst into a long hall of stained glass windows depicting ancient dragon victories over humans, casual propaganda, basically. Amber glances at the glass as they pass and whispers, "That's us," because one panel shows a dragon clutching a small human figure like a trophy. Lyra doesn't answer. She can't. Her throat is too tight. At the far end of the hall, a door slams open and Kale appears. Not through a heroic entrance. Through sheer instinct. His hand is still burned, skin cracked and blackened. His crown is gone. His hair is damp with sweat. He looks like he dragged himself through war. He sees Lyra and Amber and stops so abruptly his boots scrape stone. For 1 second, nobody moves. The stained glass throws colored light across them, red on Kale's cheek, blue on Lyra's hands, gold on Amber's eyes. It's one of those accidental painterly shots that you can tell the cinematographer is proud of, and honestly, they should be. It's gorgeous. Kale takes a step forward, voice hoarse. "Are you hurt?" Lyra's eyes flash. "We were," she snaps, "until you showed up." It's unfair, and it's honest. Kale flinches like he deserves it. Amber coughs weakly. Kale's attention snaps to her like a magnet. He moves closer carefully, palms open, as if approaching a frightened animal. Amber watches him, then reaches out and touches his burned hand. Kale sucks in a breath, pain flashing across his face. Amber whispers, "Sorry." Kale swallows hard. "Don't," he murmurs. "Never be sorry for living." That line hit me like a brick. Because it's not just about Amber. It's Kale talking to Lyra, to himself, to every version of duty that told him survival should come with shame. Then Lyra hears footsteps behind them and her head snaps up. "We're not safe," she hisses. Kale turns, senses flaring. He grabs Lyra's wrist, not roughly, but urgently, and pulls her toward a side passage. Lyra almost yanks away on reflex, and you can see her war with touch. She hates that his hand still feels familiar. They run together through the palace, and it's the first time the show lets them move as a unit. Not lovers. Not enemies. A team formed under pressure. Behind them, the corridor battle continues. Riven's coup attempt is spreading. Servants scream. Bells ring. The palace is fracturing. Kale leads them into a hidden stairwell behind a carved dragon relief, one of those secret royal passages that always exist in palace dramas because kings apparently love having escape routes. They descend into a vault-like chamber lit by a single brazier. The air is warmer here, steadier. The furnace hum softens. Kale seals the door with a handprint rune that glows briefly, then fades. Lyra spins on him the moment they're alone, voice shaking with fury. "You don't get to drag us through your politics," she says. "You don't get to make your court our battlefield." Kale's eyes are bloodshot. "You think I wanted this?" he snaps back, then immediately softens, because Amber is watching. He kneels in front of Amber. "Can you breathe?" he asks gently. Amber nods, but her lips are pale. She whispers, tired. Kale looks at Mirren's earlier vial strapped at his belt. He stole it during the chaos, and pulls it out. He uncorks it and offers Amber a sip. This will steady your fire, he says. Lyra's eyes narrow. What is it? Kale answers, dragon marrow tonic, and when Lyra flinches, he adds quickly, not from a living dragon. It's a medicine. Mirren prepared it. Lyra hesitates. The distrust is reflexive. But Amber reaches for it anyway because she trusts warmth, and Kale is warmth. Amber sips, grimaces, and whispers, yuck. Kale lets out a breath that's almost a laugh. Yes, he says softly. It's vile. That tiny moment of normalcy in a coup is exactly why the drama works. It keeps finding these little parent-child beats that remind you what's actually at stake. Then Kale stands and faces Lyra again. His voice is quieter now. I am trying to get you out, he says. Lyra's eyes glisten. Out of what? She spits. Your palace? Your life? Your mistake? Kale's throat moves as he swallows. Out of danger, he says. Lyra laughs bitterly. Danger is you, she says, then immediately looks pained because Amber's eyes flick up. Lyra forces her voice softer. I didn't come here to restore your conscience. I came for a healer. Kale's gaze drops to Amber. You came for me, he says, not accusing, just stating a fact that hurts. Lyra's shoulders sag a fraction. I came for her, she corrects. And Kale nods like he accepts the correction because he deserves it. Here's another rehook, because this is where the drama stops being just about revenge and starts being about complicity. Kale offers Lyra something she didn't expect, and it makes her angrier than any insult. He says, marry me. Lyra stares at him like he lost his mind. What? Kale's eyes don't waver. If you are my queen, he says, the council cannot touch you without declaring war on the crown itself. Amber becomes acknowledged. Protected. Legitimate. Lyra's face twists. So I become your shield, she says, voice low. After you threw me away. Kale's jaw tightens. No, he says. You become my equal. If you want it. Lyra steps closer, close enough their breath mixes. You don't get to offer me a crown like a bandage, she says. You don't get to turn my survival into your strategy. Kale's eyes flash with frustration. Everything in this palace is strategy, he says, voice rising. Do you think I can protect her with love alone? They will kill her, Lyra. Lyra's eyes burn. Then burn them, she whispers. Kale freezes. And this is where the show gives Lyra a darker edge that I genuinely appreciated. Because the obvious read is that Lyra is the moral center and Kale is the violent one. But in this moment, Lyra is the one saying, do what you have to do. Her compassion has limits when it comes to her child. It's not pretty, but it's real. Kale exhales, voice rough. If I burn them, I become what they fear, he says. And then the humans will rise, and there will be war, and Amber will be hunted on every side. Lyra's expression softens a fraction, like she sees the bigger picture even as she hates it. She glances at Amber, who is slumped against a stone pillar, eyes half closed, listening. Lyra's voice drops. So what do we do, she asks, finally letting the question be shared. Kale's shoulders sag. We leave, he says. Lyra blinks. What? Kale looks away for the first time. There is a sanctuary, he says. A place beyond the mountain ring. Old blood. Old magic. The hollow cliffs. Mirren has contacts there. Lyra's eyes narrow. You're telling me to run. Kale meets her gaze. I'm telling you to live, he says. I cannot fight a coup, council, and a prophecy while Amber is half dying. And I cannot keep you safe in this palace if I am removed. Lyra's mouth opens, then closes. She hates that is right. Amber, weakly, lifts her head. Can we go somewhere with the sea? She whispers. Lyra's face breaks. Yes, she says instantly, voice trembling. Yes, my love. Cale watches them with something like hunger. Not lust. Longing. Like he's starving for the kind of tenderness he denied himself. He steps closer and says softly to Amber, I know a cliff where the sea sounds like singing. Amber's eyes brighten a little. Really? Cale nods. Really? Then, because this drama loves to twist the knife, the door rune flickers. Someone is on the other side. Cale's body tenses instantly. He gestures for Lyra to move behind him, and Lyra, stubborn as ever, doesn't fully comply but shifts Amber farther back, placing herself between Amber and the door anyway. Protective reflex. Cale presses his palm to the rune and murmurs a command word. The door unlocks a hair, just enough to see. Mirren slips inside, breathless, hair disheveled, a cut on her temple. She looks like she ran through hell to get here. When she sees Amber, relief floods her face. Then she sees Cale and Lyra standing close, and her expression shifts to something like wary hope. You're alive, Mirren says. Cale answers, for now. Mirren swallows. The palace is splitting, she says. Riven has taken the council chamber. He has Mela with him. Seraphine has rallied some of Veilcrin, but Lord Veilcrin himself has declared for the council. They are calling you cursed. They are invoking the severance. Lyra frowns. Severance. Mirren's eyes flick to Amber. A ritual, she says quietly, meant to cut a dragon from their core. To strip their fire. To make them harmless. Cale's face goes utterly still. They would do that to a king? Lyra asks, incredulous. Mirren's voice is grim. They would do it to a god if the council feared him enough, she says. Cale's hand flexes, burned skin cracking. Where is Thorn? He asks. Mirren's expression tightens. He's alive, she says. Barely. Seraphine took him to the armory wing. She said she would buy you time. Lyra's eyes widen. Seraphine, she echoes, like the word tastes strange. Mirren nods once. She is not kind, she says, but she is not stupid. Riven's coup makes her expendable. She'd rather have you in debt than him on the throne. Cale exhales through his nose, bitter. Debts everywhere, he mutters. Mirren steps closer, lowering her voice. Majesty, she says, there is more. The prophecy, it wasn't just bribery. Cale's gaze snaps to her. Speak. Mirren's face tightens. Mela has been feeding the mountain, she says. Offering blood at the lower vents. Keeping Varos restless. The resonance Amber feels, it's not natural. It's being forced. Lyra's stomach drops. Forced how? Mirren looks at Amber with gentleness. Amber is a conduit, she says. Half human, half dragon. The mountain recognizes her as both offering and key. Mela believes if he binds her to Varos, he can control the source of dragon fire itself. He can crown whoever he wants. Cale's eyes go dark. He would chain my child to the mountain, he whispers. Lyra's voice goes sharp. Over my dead body, she says, and there it is again, that edge. That readiness. Mirren nods. That's why we must leave, she says. Now. Before they find this vault. Cale looks torn. If I leave, Riven takes the throne, he says. Lyra snaps, if you stay, Amber dies, and it's not cruel. It's math. Cale closes his eyes briefly, like someone swallowing poison. Then he nods. We go, he says. And I love that choice. Not because it's easy, but because it's rare for male leads, especially fantasy kings, to choose the child over the crown without turning it into a martyr speech. Cale doesn't make it noble. He makes it necessary. Mirren leads them through deeper passages that connect to the palace's undervents. The tunnels are warmer, air humming with geothermal breath. The camera lingers on the walls, ancient claw marks, old runes, the feeling that the palace was built around something older and hungrier than politics. Amber, now steadier from the tonic, walks on her own for a bit but stumbles often. Cale keeps reaching out as if to steady her, then hesitating like he's afraid she'll reject him. Amber solves the problem by grabbing his hand. Just takes it, like it's obvious. Cale's eyes flick down. He swallows hard. He doesn't squeeze too tight. He just lets her hold him. Lyra watches, jaw tight. Her expression is complicated, relief and resentment fighting in her face. And Park So-yeon plays it so well. She doesn't overdo it. It's just the way her eyes keep darting to their hands, then away, then back. Like she's trying to get used to a picture she never thought she'd see. They reach a hidden exit at the base of the mountain, a narrow stone mouth that opens into a ravine behind the palace's outer walls. The night air hits them like a slap, cold, clean, smelling of ash and pine. In the distance, you hear alarm horns from the palace, low and mournful. Mirren hands Cale a cloak and a small satchel of vials. For the road, she says. She looks at Lyra. For the child. Lyra's suspicion flares. Why are you helping us? She asks bluntly. Mirren meets her gaze without flinching. Because I swore to heal, she says. And because the council's obsession with purity has killed more dragons than any human blade. Lyra blinks, thrown. Cale looks at Mirren with something like gratitude. Mirren steps back. Go, she urges. I will delay them. If I can. Cale grips her forearm briefly. If you die for this. Mirren cuts him off. If I die, let it be for something that matters, she says, and then she's gone back into the tunnel, disappearing into heat and shadow like a ghost. Cale, Lyra, and Amber step into the ravine. And here's where the drama shifts into its raw dark energy, which I was honestly excited for because palace politics can get claustrophobic. The landscape opens up. The mountain looms behind them like a sleeping beast. Ahead is a slope of black stone leading down into a forest of emberleaf trees, red-veined leaves that glow faintly at night, like they are remembering fire. They move quickly, keeping low. Cale takes the lead, senses scanning, while Lyra follows with Amber tucked close. The dynamic is interesting because it's not, king protects helpless women. Lyra keeps correcting Cale's choices, where to step, how to cover tracks, what plants to avoid because their sap reflects moonlight. Cale knows mountains and enemies. Lyra knows survival in open land. Together they're competent in different ways. Amber, despite exhaustion, looks around with wide eyes. This is your home, she asks Cale. Cale answers carefully. It was, he says. Amber tilts her head. Do you like it? Cale pauses. You can see him searching for the honest answer. I loved parts of it, he says. I hated what it made me do. Amber nods slowly, like she understands in a child way. Mom says places can be sick, she says. Like people. Lyra glances at Amber, surprised. I said that, she asks. Amber shrugs weakly. You say lots of things when you think I'm sleeping. Lyra's face flushes with guilt and tenderness all at once. Cale watches that exchange like he's seeing Lyra as a mother for the first time, not just the woman he desired and then condemned. His gaze softens. It's subtle. But it matters. They camp briefly under an overhang of rock. Cale starts a fire with a controlled flick of heat, then immediately dampens it so it won't be visible. Lyra lays out blankets, checks Amber's forehead for fever, examines the faint silver shimmer still clinging to her scales. It's not cured. It's managed. Cale watches Lyra work, and you can see the guilt pressing on him like weight. He finally says, quietly, she has your hands. Lyra doesn't look up. She has your eyes, she replies, flat. Cale swallows. You raised her alone, he says. Lyra's laugh is soft and sharp. Yes, she says. I did. Cale's voice breaks slightly. I don't know how to be, he starts, then stops. The word father gets stuck. Lyra finally looks at him. Her eyes are tired, not just angry. Then learn, she says. And I love that she doesn't comfort him. She doesn't absolve him. She gives him a direction. Learn. It's the most generous thing she can offer without betraying herself. Rehook, because this is where the show sneaks in one of its most devastating emotional tricks. Amber asks the question Lyra has been dreading for 8 years. Amber, half asleep, murmurs, "Why didn't you come before?" to Cale. Cale freezes. His eyes flick to Lyra in panic, like he's asking permission to answer. Lyra's face tightens. She doesn't rescue him. She just watches, because this is his debt. Cale lowers himself beside Amber and speaks softly. "Because I was afraid," he says. Amber's brow furrows. "Of me?" Cale's throat tightens. "No," he says quickly. "Never of you. I was afraid of what the court would do. Of what they would take from me. And I thought, if I pushed your mother away, I could stop the prophecy from hurting you." Amber's eyes flutter open a little. "But that hurt," she whispers. Cale nods, tears shining in his eyes, and Jin Seokmin does this thing here that I'm obsessed with. He doesn't let the tear fall dramatically. He just blinks and it stays there, like he refuses even the relief of crying. "Yes," he whispers. "It hurt." Amber reaches out, small fingers brushing his cheek. "Don't do that again," she says, like a command. Cale leans into her touch like it's sunlight. "I won't," he says, and his voice is so sure it scares me, because the drama has taught us that promises in this world are expensive. Lyra turns her face away, silently crying. She wipes it fast with the back of her hand, angry at herself for letting it happen. And this is where I'll admit my own emotional confession, because it surprised me. I didn't cry at the exile scene. I was furious, but I didn't cry. I cried here. Because it's the quiet aftermath, seeing a child ask for consistency, seeing a man realize his fear became violence, that hit me harder than any big betrayal speech. That's the kind of scene that lingers after the episode ends and you just sit there staring at the credits like, okay, cool, I'm normal, definitely. The next stretch of episodes follows them traveling toward the Hollow Cliffs, and the show uses the journey to peel back layers of Lyra and Cale's history without dumping exposition. We learn Cale's mother, Queen Elithra, died giving birth to him because the council forced an ancient fire rite on her to strengthen the heir. Cale grew up associating love with sacrifice demanded by tradition. We learn Lyra's father was taken by the White Mantles when she was a child because he sold herbs to a dragon blood sailor, and Lyra has been living with the knowledge that morality doesn't protect you from institutions that want you gone. There's a scene at a river crossing that's pure character work. The river is cold, fast, moonlit. Cale offers to carry Amber. Lyra refuses immediately. "I've carried her through plague," she says. Cale nods, accepts it, then quietly shifts into partial dragon form, scales blooming along his arms, claws extending, and anchors himself in the riverbed to create a stable path. He becomes a living bridge. Lyra watches him do it, expression unreadable. She steps onto his forearm to cross, careful not to slip. For a moment, her bare foot presses against his scaled skin. He flinches, not from pain but from intimacy. Lyra feels it, and her face changes, like she remembers the cabin, the warmth, the gloves coming off. She pulls her foot away quickly, almost guilty. Amber, watching, whispers, "You two are weird." Lyra hisses, Amber, embarrassed. Cale actually lets out a small laugh, quiet, startled, like he forgot he could. Amber smiles faintly, satisfied. That's the kind of lightly humorous aside the show does well. It doesn't break tone. It gives you breath without defanging the stakes. But the stakes are always stalking them. Riven, back at the palace, consolidates power fast. We see him in the council chamber, calm and clean while chaos rages outside. Oracle Mela kneels beside him, whispering. Seraphine stands to the side, tense, forced into an uneasy alliance because her clan is split and her father has gone all in with Riven's purity platform. Riven promises the council stability, promises the humans he'll enforce the border, promises the white mantles he'll cleanse the ash. He is playing everyone like instruments. And Kale's absence becomes a propaganda weapon. Riven declares Kale fled because the prophecy was true. He paints Lyra as a seductress witch. He calls Amber the devourer ember. The show even gives us little snippets of tavern gossip in the lowlands, humans whispering that the Dragon King has birthed a demon child, while dragons whispering that the king's seed has been tainted. It's a nice touch because it shows how myths get made faster than truth. Meanwhile, Amber's condition fluctuates. The tonic buys time, but silver fever isn't gone. Mirren warned them, without periodic core contact, Amber's fire will destabilize again. That means Kale has to keep feeding the ember thread, small pulses of heat, controlled, regular. It's like a parent having to hold a child's hand across a bridge forever. And the show uses that requirement to force intimacy between Kale and Lyra in a way that doesn't feel like cheap romance. There's a scene where Amber is sleeping and Kale is sitting beside her, palm hovering over her chest, sending a faint warmth. Lyra watches from across the campfire. Kale's face is soft in the firelight, unguarded. Lyra's anger doesn't vanish, but it shifts into something more complicated, grief for what could have been, fear of wanting it again. Kale looks up and catches her watching. He doesn't smirk. He doesn't flirt. He just says, quietly, "She likes your stories." Lyra's voice is flat. They keep her calm. Kale nods. "Tell me one," he says. Lyra scoffs. "You wouldn't like them." Kale's eyes stay on hers. "Try me," he says. Lyra hesitates. Then, surprisingly, she tells him the story of the Salt Fox, a lowland folktale about a fox who steals warmth from a dragon by making it laugh. As she speaks, her voice softens despite herself. Kale listens like a starving man. Amber, half asleep, smiles faintly. And when Lyra finishes, Kale says, "In Valor, dragons don't laugh in stories. They punish." Lyra replies, "In ours, they can be fooled." Kale's mouth curves slightly. "Good," he says. "Maybe we deserve it." That's one of those lines that tells you the writers understand shame. Kale isn't asking to be forgiven. He's acknowledging he might not be. The Hollow Cliffs arc introduces a whole new faction, the Cinder Monks, a neutral sect that broke away from both Dragon Court and human religion centuries ago. They live in caves carved into seaside cliffs, where volcanic rock meets ocean spray. Their entire philosophy is balance, heat and cold, dragon and human, power and restraint. They're the kind of group that could be corny if written lazily, but the show makes them feel lived in, simple robes stained with salt, prayer bells made from old dragon scales, gardens of ember moss that glow at night. Their leader is Brother Siren, an older man with burned scars across his palms and a voice like sand. He recognizes Kale immediately, but he doesn't bow. He looks at Kale's burned hand and says, "A king who burns himself is either a fool or a father." Kale doesn't answer. Lyra answers for him. "Both," she says. Siren leads them into the caves and examines Amber. He confirms Mirren's diagnosis and adds something worse, Amber's resonance with Pharaohs has already begun. The mountain's call is imprinted in her blood. Even away from Valor, she sometimes hears it in the sound of waves, in the hush between bells. Amber, hearing this, looks scared. "Am I bad?" she whispers. Lyra's eyes flash. "No," she says instantly. Siren kneels to Amber's level. "You are loud," he says gently. "The world will try to make you quiet in ways that hurt. But loud is not bad." Amber blinks. "Mom says loud gets you killed." Siren's gaze flicks to Lyra, not judgmental, just knowing. "Sometimes loud gets you free," he says. Lyra stiffens, defensive. Kale watches her, expression tight. The monks offer them shelter, but not without conditions. Kale must submit to a cleansing meditation to stabilize his core, because the ember thread has left his fire unbalanced. If his core flares unpredictably, he could accidentally burn Amber while trying to save her. Lyra must agree to let the monks teach Amber breath discipline, technique to regulate dragon fire without suppression. Lyra hates the idea of strangers shaping amber. But she's desperate. Kale and Lyra's tension escalates here in a way that feels painfully adult. Lyra accuses Kale of wanting to mold amber into a dragon. Kale accuses Lyra of wanting to erase the dragon in amber out of fear. They both love amber, and they both want control, and neither wants to admit how much control is about their own trauma. There's a scene in a cave pool, lit by phosphorescent moss, that I keep thinking about. Amber is sleeping. Kale is submerged waist-deep in the pool, meditating as Siren chants softly. Lyra watches from the edge, arms folded. The water reflects on Kale's face like moving light, making him look younger, almost boyish. Lyra's expression softens despite herself. Siren says, without looking up, hatred is easy heat. It burns fast. Love is slow heat. It keeps you alive. Lyra bristles. Don't preach at me, she says. Siren replies calmly, I'm not preaching. I'm naming what I see. You carry hate like armor. It protected you. Now it's heavy. Lyra's eyes sharpen. And what does he carry? She asks, nodding toward Kale. Siren's voice is gentle. Shame, he says. Shame that he calls duty. Kale's eyes flick open at that, and you can see the wound. He doesn't deny it. He just closes his eyes again tighter, as if the truth stings. Lyra's throat tightens. She looks away, conflicted. And I know some viewers hate when a wise mentor character says the obvious out loud. I usually do too. But it works here because it's not telling the audience what to think. It's telling the characters what they refuse to say. And because the actors react to it like it matters, it doesn't feel like a writer's lecture. Back at the palace, Riven's reign begins to show its teeth. He orders a hunt for Kale, framing it as rescuing the king from human corruption. He sends trackers called ashhounds, elite dragon riders bonded to scenting drakes that can follow magical residue, especially the ember thread. The ashhounds are led by Commander Vessa, a ruthless woman loyal to Riven not out of love but because he promised her status beyond her birth clan. She's a great secondary antagonist because she's practical. She doesn't monologue. She just executes. Riven also tightens his hold on Seraphine. He offers her a deal, marry him, become queen anyway, keep her clan's power. Seraphine's face remains calm, but the camera catches her hand clenching behind her sleeve. She is trapped. If she refuses, she becomes suspect. If she accepts, she legitimizes a usurper. And her father, Lord Valkyrin, pressures her hard, telling her she must do it for the clan. Seraphine's arc becomes this cold war between her pride and her survival, and it's honestly one of the most compelling side threads. There's a brutal scene where Riven visits Thorn in a cell. Thorn is chained, bruised, barely conscious. Riven crouches and speaks softly, almost kindly. Where did Kale go? He asks. Thorn spits blood and smiles faintly. Somewhere you can't breathe, he croaks. Riven's smile doesn't falter. He gestures, and a guard brings in a small basin of cold iron water. Riven dips his fingers in it and lets the droplets fall onto Thorn's wounds. Thorn screams. Riven watches like he's studying a chemical reaction. You see, he murmurs, I don't need prophecy to know how to break a kingdom. I only need leverage. It's chilling, and it's also why Riven works as a villain. He doesn't believe in fate. He believes in systems. He believes everything and everyone can be used. Back at the cliffs, Kale's meditation stabilizes his core somewhat, but it also opens a door inside him that he can't close, memory. The show uses dream sequences sparingly, but when it does, it nails them. Kale dreams of the cabin night again, firelight, Lyra's breath, her hand on his wrist. Then the dream twists into the throne room exile, Lyra's torn sleeve, the star mark, Kale saying, deny her, while his mouth fills with ash. He wakes with a gasp, steam rising from his skin like he's literally burning from guilt. Lyra finds him outside at dawn, standing at the cliff edge staring at the sea. The sky is pale pink. The ocean is steel blue. The wind is sharp. Kale looks small against it, which is rare for a king character. Lyra approaches slowly. Kale speaks first, voice rough. I thought prophecy would protect my realm, he says. But all it did was make me afraid of love. Lyra's eyes narrow. Don't turn this into poetry, she says. You hurt me. Kale nods, accepting it. Yes, he says. I did. Lyra's voice trembles with fury she's been holding back. Do you know what it was like, she asks. To be thrown out and then hunted by my own people because of you. To give birth in a slum while hearing dragon horns in my nightmares. To watch her cough sparks and wonder if today is the day someone sees her eyes. Kale's face crumples. No, he whispers. I don't. And that's the punishment I can't undo. Lyra steps closer, voice dropping. Then don't ask me to marry you, she says. Don't ask me to wear your crown like it will make me safe. Safety isn't a ring. It's choices. Kale meets her gaze. Then tell me what choice to make, he says, and there's desperation in it that I didn't expect. Kings usually command. Kale is asking. Lyra's eyes fill. She looks away toward the sea, swallowing. Choose her, she says. Every time. Even when it costs you. Kale's jaw tightens. It will cost me everything, he says. Lyra replies, good, and it's not cruelty. It's justice. It's her refusing to let him buy redemption cheaply. Then Amber's cough echoes from inside the caves, and both of them move instantly. Again, synchronized. Again, the one thing that makes them a unit. Amber's silver fever flares later that night. The tonic wears off. Her skin turns clammy. The silver shimmer spreads along her shoulder blades like frost. She starts shivering violently, which is terrifying because she's a fire-blooded child. If she's cold, something is very wrong. Siren explains the next step, a ritual called the tide tempering. It involves immersing Amber in a tide pool at midnight while Kale channels controlled heat, and Lyra anchors Amber emotionally with voice and touch. The idea is to teach Amber's blood to regulate between cold ocean and hot core balance. It's risky, but staying as is riskier. This is the drama's most cinematic mini-sequence since The Cabin Night, and honestly, it might be even better because it's not sexy, it's sacred. They carry Amber down to a tide pool carved into the cliff base, surrounded by black rock and glowing ember moss. The sea crashes below, loud and relentless. Moonlight paints everything silver. Sirens' monks ring small bells, their sound thin against the ocean roar. Amber, half delirious, whispers, "Mom." Lyra strokes her hair. "I'm here," she says, voice steady even though she's shaking inside. Kale kneels on the opposite side of the pool. He looks at Amber, then at Lyra. He says softly, "I need you." Lyra's eyes flick to him, angry at the vulnerability in the request. Then she nods once. "Then don't lie to me," she says. Kale holds her gaze. "I won't," he promises. They lower Amber into the water. She gasps as the cold hits. The silver on her scales flares bright. Amber starts to cry, weakly, the sound torn away by wind. Lyra leans over the pool, hands in the water holding Amber's shoulders, whispering the salt fox story in a shaky voice. Kale places his palm just above the water and channels heat, not into the pool, but into the air above Amber's chest, creating a warm pocket around her heart. The camera moves in slow circles around them, and the sound design does this beautiful layering, ocean crash as fate, bell chime as discipline, Lyra's voice as anchor, Kale's breath as fire. It's like the show is composing a family out of elements. Amber's breathing steadies. Her shivering slows. The silver retreats a fraction. Her eyes, still gold, focus on Kale. "Warm," she whispers. Kale whispers back, "Always." Lyra's voice breaks mid-story, tears falling into the tide pool. She keeps talking anyway. That's motherhood. That's love under pressure. You keep speaking even when your voice shakes because silence is worse. The ritual works, partially. Amber stabilizes enough to sleep afterward. But Siren warns them, this is not a cure. This is training. Amber needs time. She needs repeated tempering. And the ash hounds are already on their trail. Sure enough, the next morning, one of the monks returns from a cliff lookout pale-faced. Riders, he says. Drakes in the sky. They are close. Kale's body tenses. Lyra's stomach drops. Amber, still weak, clings to Lyra's hand. Siren turns to Kale. You brought war to our sanctuary, he says, not accusing, just stating fact. Kale nods. I know, he replies. I'm sorry. Siren's eyes soften slightly. Sorry doesn't stop fire, he says. Action does. Kale looks at Lyra. We leave, he says. Lyra's face hardens. We can't outrun drakes with a sick child, she says. Kale's gaze turns determined. Then we don't outrun, he says. We misdirect. And this is where the show gets clever with strategy instead of just brawling. Kale proposes splitting their scent trail. He will fly, yes, fully shift into dragon form for the first time since the opening episodes, and draw the ash hounds away with a decoy ember thread flare. Lyra will take Amber along the cliff caves to an old smuggler's route that leads down to a fishing village where human ships can carry them farther along the coast. Siren will ward the caves behind them. Lyra immediately rejects it. You'll leave her again, she snaps, the fear raw. Kale's eyes flash with pain. Not like before, he says firmly. This time, I'm choosing to go so she can live. Lyra's voice shakes. You think that difference matters to a child, she demands. Amber, listening, whispers, I don't want him to go. Kale kneels in front of Amber. I don't want to go either, he says gently. But I need to make the sky look at me, not at you. Amber's lips tremble. Will you come back, she asks, voice small. Kale's throat tightens. He looks like he's about to promise the impossible. Then he catches himself, Lyra's earlier demand, don't lie. He takes a breath. I will come back, he says, and the way he says it is careful. Not arrogant certainty. A vow he intends to bleed for. Amber nods, tears sliding down her cheeks. She suddenly lunges forward and hugs him, arms around his neck. Kale freezes for half a second, then wraps his arms around her slowly, like he's afraid to crush her. His eyes close. He inhales her scent like it's medicine. Lyra watches, torn apart by the sweetness of it. Then Amber pulls back and whispers, fiercely, don't be stupid. Kale lets out a soft laugh, wet-eyed. I'll try, he murmurs. Lyra clears her throat, voice tight. If you die, she says to Kale, I will haunt your entire bloodline. Kale looks at her, and despite everything, his mouth curves. Noted, he says. They split. Lyra and Amber go with two monks through narrow cave passages that open onto a hidden cliffside path. Kale steps out onto an exposed rock platform facing the open sky. The wind whips his cloak. He looks up, eyes narrowing, and you see him making peace with something ancient in himself. Then he shifts. The transformation is done with a mix of practical effects and CGI, and it's surprisingly tasteful. It doesn't linger in body horror detail. It shows bone structure stretching, scales blossoming like armor, wings unfurling with a heavy, leathery sound that makes the air feel thick. The color palette shifts warmer, the furnace hum surges, and for the first time, Kale looks fully like what the world fears. He roars into the sky, and the sound echoes off the cliffs like thunder. In the distance, the ash hound's drakes respond with shrieks, turning toward him instantly. Commander Vesa spots the dragon silhouette against the sunlit clouds and smiles. There, she says. The king. Kale launches into the air, wings beating hard. The camera tracks him from below as he climbs, and it's one of the show's most visually triumphant shots, except it's not triumph. It's sacrifice disguised as spectacle. Down in the caves. Lyra hears the roar and flinches. Amber squeezes her hand. His loud, Amber whispers, trying to sound brave. Lyra forces herself to keep moving. Yes, she whispers back. So we can be quiet. And right as they reach the smuggler's route, a shadow passes over the cliff mouth. A drake has broken formation. Not all the ashhounds chased Kale. Riven is too smart for that. He sent a second unit to sweep the coastline just in case. The show cuts to Commander Vessa receiving a messenger hawk mid-flight. Yes, they use hawks because not everything has to be magical, and the message is a simple command: find the child. Lyra looks up, sees the drake silhouette, and her blood turns to ice. Amber's eyes widen. The mountain wind suddenly feels like a hunter's breath. And that's where this stretch ends up living, in that awful, electric tension between sky and stone, between a father roaring to lure death away and a mother trying to keep her child's fire hidden while enemies circle overhead. Now let me talk craft, because deny me, Dragon King is not just a plot machine. It's a sensory experience when it wants to be. The cinematography is consistently strong, especially in spaces that matter emotionally. The Sunwell chambers look like a womb and a prison at the same time: steam, gold light, stone that feels alive. The hollow cliffs are shot with this raw, salty clarity that makes the world feel bigger than the palace. And the Undervents finale is genuinely impressive production design: those lava channels, the runes glowing, the way the heat haze distorts faces so everyone looks slightly unreal, like they're being judged by something older than them. The CG is mostly solid. Kale's dragon form could have looked goofy if they cheaped out, but they didn't. The wing physics feel heavy. The scale texture catches light beautifully. My one small gripe is that sometimes the facial animation in close-ups sits just a touch in uncanny valley territory, especially when Kale speaks in dragon form. But honestly, it's minor, and the direction wisely avoids lingering too long on mouth movement. They lean on silhouette, on eyes, on sound. Smart. Editing-wise, the only stretch that truly bugged me was that earlier palace chase where spatial clarity got muddy. In the finale, the action is much cleaner. The show learned from itself. Also, the pacing: this is a long drama, and it could have sagged in the middle travel episodes, but the writers keep injecting character reveals and moral dilemmas to keep it from becoming, and then they walked some more. Music and sound design deserve a real shout-out. That furnace hum motif is one of the most effective subtle sound signatures I've heard in a fantasy romance. It makes Kale feel like heat in human skin. The way it shifts when Amber is born, when the ember thread forms, when the mountain calms, those are choices. And the show isn't afraid of silence either. The exile storm scene, the Heartforge ritual moments, Lyra's quiet sobbing while Amber sleeps, silence is used like a blade. Acting is the glue holding all this together. Park So-young's Lyra is written as competent and stubborn, and she could have been one-note, strong, but Park plays her with softness under the steel. You see the grief in her shoulders, the way she holds her breath when someone coughs, the way she flinches at touch not because she's fragile but because memory is physical. Jin Seokmin's Kale is honestly a great example of how to play a powerful male lead without making him a statue. His eyes do so much work: fear behind authority, shame behind anger, tenderness that looks unfamiliar to him. And the child actress playing Amber is the secret weapon. She's not just cute. She's emotionally precise. She makes Amber feel like a kid, not a plot device, which is hard in a story where the child is literally prophecy. And because my overall stance is loved, I want to be clear: it's not perfect. Some dialogue lines are a little too quotable in a way that feels like the writers knew they were writing clip moments. There are a couple of speeches that walk the line between stirring and sermon. And if you hate prophecy as a storytelling engine, this drama will test you, because prophecy is everywhere: law, religion, politics, personal trauma. But I'll also defend it here: the drama doesn't use prophecy as lazy fate. It uses prophecy as propaganda. That's a smarter, nastier, more relevant choice than just, destiny says so. Also, I know some people will say Kale doesn't deserve Lyra. And emotionally? I get it. Intellectually? The show gets it too. It never insists you must forgive him. It asks a harder question: what does accountability look like when the person who hurt you is also capable of change, and when a child is involved? Kale doesn't get redemption through suffering alone. He gets it through confession, sacrifice, and structural change, stepping down, dismantling the system that enabled his cruelty, choosing truth even when it humiliates him. That doesn't erase what he did. But it makes the love story feel less like fantasy and more like repair. And Lyra's arc matters just as much. She doesn't become queen because she's chosen. She becomes powerful because she refuses erasure. She drags her own lineage out of the vault and forces a court to look at it. She learns to let Amber's dragon side exist without treating it as poison. She also learns, slowly, painfully, that control isn't the same as safety. Watching her loosen her grip just enough for Amber to breathe, while still protecting her fiercely, is one of the most honest depictions of trauma parenting I've seen in this genre. If you're new to this kind of fantasy romance drama, Deny Me, Dragon King is a wild entry point because it gives you the spectacle, the palace, the dragon fire, the ritual magic, but it's really about three things: fear as policy, love as discipline, and family as rebellion. It's about how institutions turn people into symbols, and how surviving that means insisting on being a person anyway. So yeah, I loved it. Not in a no-notes way. In a this actually got under my skin way. I finished it and found myself thinking about Lyra's line, "You did what was easiest," for days, because that's the real villain in so many lives. Not evil. Easy. Easy choices that hurt other people while protecting your ego. If you're the kind of viewer who wants clean morality, quick forgiveness, and villains who are evil for fun, you might get impatient here. If you want messy accountability, slow burn trust rebuilding, and a child character who actually feels like a child while still being central to the plot, this drama will feed you. If you're here for Seraphine specifically, you'll be rewarded. She's one of the best written, rival, characters in a long time because she's not just jealousy. She's survival, ambition, and buried truth. That's my full spoiler breakdown of Deny Me, Dragon King, and if you made it all the way here with me on Bongo Gaming, I appreciate you more than Kale appreciated peace and quiet, which is saying something. Drop a comment telling me whether you were team, Lyra should never forgive him, or team, accountability and repair, because I'm genuinely curious where you landed. If you enjoyed this kind of long-form drama review, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, breathe between the heat and the cold, and don't let anyone turn your life into their prophecy.